Andy for reading our scripture this morning. Friends, it's great to get to be with you. And Adam, maybe we can bring mine down just a little bit, or at least I hear some feedback. I'm doing a little bit of back and forth today. One of the other churches in our family of churches, Highland Park Pres, I'm also preaching in their services there this morning. So I miss getting to visit with some of you before and after the service, but great to get to be with you now. If you've been with us for these last few weeks, you know we've been making our way during Lent through this teaching series, looking at some of the most extraordinary claims that Jesus made about himself, the so-called I am claims of Jesus in the Gospel of John. And today, we come to what is by far and away one of the most beloved and comforting claims that Jesus made about himself. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. You know, there are a lot of metaphors that the Bible uses to describe God's relationship with his people. So a king to his servants or a father to his children. But did you know that 400 times the Bible refers to God's people as sheep? And 100 times the Bible speaks of God as their shepherd. Some of you might be familiar with Psalm 23. I've done a number of funerals over the years, and people have different scriptures they want read for their funeral, but the one scripture nearly everybody wants read at their funeral is Psalm 23, which begins, "The Lord is my shepherd." Incredibly comforting words. And so when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, not only is he claiming to be God, which he is, you know, he's picking up on all of the ways in which the Bible speaks of God as the shepherd of his people. Not only is Jesus claiming to be God, but he's also tapping into this incredibly comforting, rich metaphor of the shepherd with his sheep. And yet what I want to suggest to you this morning as we begin at least to get us started, is that this metaphor, which actually can be so deeply comforting to us, it will actually only be comforting to you to the degree to which it's first insulting. To the degree to which you first might find it to be somewhat offensive. And you may say, well, why would that be? Why would I be insulted that the Bible speaks of this metaphor of the shepherd with the sheep? I mean, maybe when you think about shepherding, like me, maybe you've got this vision of green, soft grass and rolling hills and blue skies and streams of water and soft, fluffy little lambs. I mean, what could be insulting about that? That is such a comforting vision. Or maybe you think about little kids who in church pageants will dress up as little lambs. I mean, isn't that adorable? You know, we've got a 6-week-old son, and somebody gave us this book. It's called Found. It's about Psalm 23 by Sally Lloyd-Jones, and here's how the book begins. It says, God is my shepherd, and I am his little lamb. Isn't that precious? Now, I don't think that whoever gave us that book was trying to insult our son. I don't think they were trying to say something offensive by giving him this book, but had they thought about the metaphor a little bit more, maybe had they known a little bit more about sheep, maybe it would have given them just a little bit of pause. You ever heard that expression before, to be as nimble as a sheep? No? You want to know why you've never heard it? Because sheep are not nimble. You ever heard the expression to be as fast as a sheep? No, because every sheep could be outrun by its predators. You ever heard the expression to be smart as a sheep? No, because sheep, to put it, delicately, they're not the brightest, lights in the shed. They're not the brightest bulbs, but to put it more bluntly, sheep are dumb. They're stupid animals. Now, I've never spent much time around sheep. Maybe you have spent more. I've never done any shepherding. I'm not speaking from any personal experience, but I have read some books by people who've been shepherds, particularly by pastors who were previously shepherds before they became pastors. One of them is named Douglas McMillan. He wrote a great little book on Psalm 23. Here's what he tells us about sheep and their stupidity. He says, if you put a sheep in pasture land, where the sheep begins to eat the grass that's there. That sheep will actually eat all of the grass in that space down to the very ground until finally they'll start to eat the excrement of the other sheep, and they'll get sick and they'll begin to die from it. Even if there's green grass just over the hill, there's more pasture. If they only were willing to go and look for it, if the sheep is not led to it, they will not go to it. Moreover, sheep are constantly getting lost. They're often wandering away from the flock, and if they do get lost, they can't find their way home. Maybe you've heard of stories before of dogs or of horses, who are able to go on these incredible journeys to find their way back home. Not sheep. You could put them right next to the sheepfold, right next to home. They don't know it's home. They can't find it. And if they get lost, there's no chance they could survive in the wild. If you had a horse that got lost, maybe it becomes a wild stallion running free, not a sheep. They're just going to get eaten by predators. And when a sheep is lost, even if the shepherd goes out and finds the sheep and picks it up and puts it on his shoulder and begins to carry it back to safety, the sheep is panicked. He's frantic. He's fretting, he's bleeding. He has no idea that the shepherd is doing something for his good. He thinks, what is this terrible thing that's happening to me? Sheep are always getting lost, and sheep are not clean animals. They get lice and ticks and worms. They often have to be washed in strong chemicals to be cleaned. And somebody sent me this article this week. You ever heard that expression before, don't be a sheep? It means like sheep tend to follow the lead of other sheep, even if they're making really dumb decisions. Well, somebody sent me this article. This is from the AP News about 15 years ago. It's about sheep in Turkey who apparently there was one sheep who decided to jump off a cliff. You remember your mom says, if somebody jumps over a bridge, why do you need to do it? Well, apparently this sheep jumped off of the cliff, and then one by one, 1,500 sheep all jumping over the cliff. 450 of them only died, presumably because they landed on a big pile of the fluffy sheep who were already there before them. I mean, think about this. 400 times the Bible says this is the animal that human beings are like. Now, are you a little bit insulted now? Maybe just feel a little bit of that offense. I mean, sheep are vulnerable. They're helpless. They're dumb. They're constantly going into directions, wandering astray that are harmful for them. They desperately need a shepherd. And you might say, well, Charlie, did you come here today to insult us or to encourage us and to comfort us? And I would say it's a little bit of both. And it has to be both. When you read the Bible, of course, you'll find this is not all that the Bible says about people. The Bible says a lot of other things about people because people are not sheep. I mean, people can be resourceful and independent and can sometimes find their way home if you've got a good sense of direction. People can do some of these things. The Bible doesn't say that people are sheep. It says that people are like sheep, which means that we've got some sheep-like qualities. We have some sheep-like tendencies and propensities, maybe that we don't so much want to see or admit about ourselves. But I'll tell you, unless you're willing to acknowledge that you're more like a sheep than you might want to admit, you won't actually experience the depth of what it means for Jesus to be your shepherd. Maybe to look back on your life and to recognize that maybe you see some things in your past and you think, gosh, that was really stupid. Why did I do that? Why did I make that decision? What was I thinking? Maybe with some hindsight you can see that. Maybe you can look back and you can see there were some ways that I wandered away, that I veered off from the God who loves me, who cares about me. Maybe you see some ways that you just wanted to run away. You wanted to seek your joy and satisfaction apart from him. And I think about my own life, and I think about those words. You know that song, Come Thou Fount? One of the lyrics in that song that I most resonate with says, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. And I think about my own life, and I've been following Jesus or trying to follow Jesus as my shepherd for a number of years, but I know that often I'm more inclined to want to trust my own wisdom and reason than to trust what God says in his word. I'm often more inclined to want to depend on my own resources rather than to have to actually rely on God and dependence on him. And I know that there's part of my heart that often wants to just rebel and run away from my shepherd, to do life in my own way. You know, sometimes I've thought to myself, maybe the reason why God called me to be a pastor is not because I have more faith than other people, not because I'm more holy than other people. Sometimes I think it's kind of remedial. It's almost as if God is saying, look, other people, maybe they just need to listen to that scripture for half an hour on Sunday. You need like 16 hours to study it throughout the week for it to finally begin to make its way from your head down into your self-sufficient heart. Prone to wander. Lord, I feel it. And you know, the Bible says that is true of all of us. Isaiah 53:6 says, we all like sheep have gone astray, each to his own way, or at least to us what might seem like our own way. I think the reality is even if you say to yourself, I'm not going to be a sheep, I'm not going to be a follower, I'm going to be independent, I'm going to chart my own course for life, I'm going to do it my way, the reality is that actually you're treading a path that someone else has already tread. You're eating from pasture that another sheep has already eaten from before, and maybe there's a little bit of grass left there, and you think, I'm going to find my satisfaction in being really good at my career, or making a lot of money, or having fame or success or love or sex or beauty or whatever else it might be. But the reality is you're going to eat down that grass, and then you're going to find there's not a lot of nourishment left there for your soul. And it's as if Jesus is saying, look, I'm the one who can lead you to green pastures just over here if you would trust me, if you would let me be your shepherd. You see, you'll only experience this comfort of this metaphor of Jesus as your shepherd if you're willing to first admit that you're more like a sheep. But can I tell you the best thing about admitting that you're a sheep is that then you get to have a shepherd. And not just any shepherd, but the good shepherd. And this passage of scripture that Mandy read for us a moment ago is far more about the love of the shepherd than it is about the stupidity of the sheep. It's about Jesus who says, I'm the good shepherd who knows us, who protects us, and who leads us. So let's just walk through those three together as we wrap up this morning. So first, the good shepherd, Jesus says he knows us. He says, I know my sheep and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. This incredibly intimate knowledge in this relationship. In fact, Jesus says, my sheep, they hear my voice, and they know me, and I call them by name. Now, in Jesus' day, it wasn't uncommon for shepherds to use the same sheepfold. Remember, we talked last Sunday about the sheepfold, this stone enclosure where the shepherd would bring his sheep at night. It wasn't uncommon for multiple shepherds to use the same sheepfold. So they bring all their flocks into the sheepfold. Now you got all these different sheep mixed up together. How are you going to know whose sheep are whose? But the next morning, the shepherd would come and they knew them. They were actually able to distinguish whose sheep were whose because shepherds knew their sheep that well. In fact, shepherds have done experiments before where they'll mix up all their sheep. Then they go out, they stand like at a distance and they start to whistle and to call. And it's amazing because the sheep, they go right to their shepherd because the sheep know their shepherd. They might be dumb, but that's one of the things they do pretty well. They listen for the voice of their shepherd. Jesus says, that's how I know my sheep. In fact, he goes a step further because he says, I call my sheep by name. I don't know of any other shepherd who would do that in Jesus' day, but he says, I know my sheep that well. I know them all by name. I was thinking about, what might be kind of a comparison, an analogy for that depth of a knowing relationship. And I think probably the best analogy is probably marriage. I was talking to a young couple this week who are engaged. They're getting ready to get married in a couple months. And one of the things they told me is they said, we've been getting ready for this wedding But we never really stop to think about the significance of the vows. Like, why are the vows so important? Why not just throw this big party to celebrate your love for each other? Why take these vows? Why make these promises? And you see, the thing about vows is that they're not in the present tense. They're not in the present tense. I mean, when you're getting married, everybody knows you love each other presently. That's why you're getting married. I mean, and you look great on that day. And everybody looks their best on their wedding day. I mean, they're the thinnest that they're ever going to be. It's the best that they're ever going to look. And so, of course, you love each other in that moment then. But you see, the vows are not the present. They're about the future. They're saying what's going to be true down the road. And maybe some of you have heard wedding vows before, but can I sum them up for you this morning? Essentially, what people are saying in those wedding vows is they're saying, when you find out what I'm really like, when you find out what I'm really like, I will still love you, or I won't leave you. Or that's what they're supposed to mean. That's the promise that's being made in that moment. When I see your flaws, when I see all that's broken and that's wrong with you, I won't leave you. I'll still be committed to you. Now, some of you might hear that if you're not married and you think, gosh, I wish I had that. Or maybe some of you have been through marriages where you say, that wasn't the reality for me. Maybe some of you are married and you say, I wish I had that. But you see, here's the thing. All of us actually have something better than that if Jesus is your shepherd. Because, even in the best of human marriages, even where they might know each other so well, you've known each other your whole life, there are still thoughts, there are still desires. Nobody knows all of the selfish thoughts and desires that their spouse has. Frankly, if they did, would there be any happy couples? Would there be any couples at all? And yet, you see, Jesus is the only one who knows us all the way through, who knows us all the way down. He knows all of our sheep-like nature. He knows all the stupid things we've done in our past, all the things we'll do wrong in the future, all the things we would be so ashamed if anyone else knew about us. Jesus says, I know all of that. And he takes you by the hand, he looks you in the eye, and he says, I won't leave you. He says, I love you. In fact, later in this chapter in the Gospel of John, Jesus says, I know my sheep, and no one can snatch them out of my hand. What a comfort it is to know that Jesus knows all of your sheep-like nature and yet is so committed to you. He knows us. Secondly, he protects us. That's what's going on when he makes this comparison to the hired hand. He says, here's the thing about a hired hand. Will the hired hand care for the sheep? Will he feed the sheep? Will he lead the sheep? Absolutely. He does all those things for the sheep. But why is he doing it? Not because the sheep are precious to him, but the wages are precious to him. So therefore, if there comes any danger, if there's a wolf or if there's a robber, well, the hired hand, he's gonna flee. He's gonna run from the sheep because the sheep are not precious to him. The wages are precious to him. But Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd who lays down my life for the sheep. If there's harm, if there's danger coming for my sheep, I'm gonna put myself between my sheep and that harm. I lay down my life for them. And friends, you see, in a way, this is where Jesus maybe is kind of mixing some of the metaphors around sheep and shepherding, because while Jesus says he's the good shepherd, you might remember at the beginning of the Gospel of John, John the Baptist looks at Jesus, and what does he say of him? He says, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And Isaiah 53:6 says, we all like sheep have gone astray, each to his own way, but the Lord has laid on him, that is, God has laid on Jesus, the iniquity of us all, which means the sin of us all was laid on Jesus. And like a sheep led to the slaughter, yet he does not open his mouth. He is silent. He goes willingly to that death for us. Why? Because we're precious to him. Because he values you that much. Jesus says, more than I value my glory, more than I value my life itself, more than I value even that smile of my Father that I've known for eternity, Jesus says, I would gladly give all of that up because my sheep are that precious to me. He values us in that way. And friends, can I tell you what a comfort that can be? even in the face of death. This last week I was sitting in the hospice room of a friend of mine, a member of Highland Park Pres, who I've known for years, and I was there with him and his family, and that was the day when he went to go meet his shepherd. It was the day on which he died, and as we were sitting there together, I was thinking about that familiar psalm, Psalm 23, and I was thinking about those words, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And I was thinking about, why does it say the shadow of death? Why doesn't it just say the valley of death? And as I thought about it, I thought, for the Christian, as we read that psalm, the reason it says that is because for those of us who live on this side of Easter and the resurrection of Jesus, we know that Jesus, he defeated death for us. Jesus is the only person who did not die as a victim. He died willingly. He triumphed over death for us. He emptied death of all of its power towards us so that when we die, the worst that death can do to those who have Jesus as their shepherd, the worst it can do is usher us into greater life than we've ever known before. So experience the shadow of death, but not death itself. Jesus already defeated that for us. And I was talking to one of the nurses in that hospice facility, and she said to me, I see so many families who come through here, and all they have is despair. As they grieve over the death of someone whom they love, all they have is despair. But as I looked at this family, even as they were sad, even as they were grieving the death of this man, there was comfort and there was real hope, because they knew Jesus as their good shepherd, who ultimately would protect them, who would allow no eternal harm to come their way. He protects us because of how much he values us. And can I just add here that if you're a person who believes you have value, you think you're an incredibly valuable person, but you don't know that you're a sheep, you're going to be arrogant. You might even go through life feeling like a fraud because deep down you know you're a sheep. But if on the other hand, you just think you're a sheep, but you don't know your value, that leads to self-loathing. That leads to despair. But you see, to have both of these together, that's to really know yourself. To know you're a sheep, but you're a sheep deeply loved by your shepherd. He protects you because of how much he values you. And then third and finally, he leads you. Jesus says in verses 3-4, he says, I know my sheep, I call them by name, I lead them out, they follow me, and I go before them, he says. Now, I didn't know this until this week, but apparently there's a difference between Western shepherds and Eastern shepherds. Western shepherds, they actually lead their sheep from behind. So they've got sheepdogs driving the sheep forward, but Eastern shepherds, they go in front of the sheep. They lead the sheep. They go before the sheep. Now, why would that be important? Why is that comforting to know that Jesus leads you going before you? I was thinking about a conversation this week within our community group, conversation around parenting and children, whether it's young children or whether it's grown older children, and this anxiety that you may feel as parents. I think Brandy and I already feel this to some degree, this desire for your kids to know Jesus as their shepherd. You long for them to know his love for them, his care for them, his protection over them. And yet there might be this sense of, am I parenting him in the right way? Am I pushing Jesus too much or not enough? How am I doing as a parent? Am I making those right decisions? I think parents might feel that way. I think others of us in this room, whether you're a parent or not, you might just feel that anxiety over your life. Am I making the right decisions? Am I charting the right course? And yet, let me tell you, if Jesus really goes before you, if he's really leading, going in front of you, here's what that means. You make a good decision, you're following right in step with the shepherd, wonderful. But if you make a bad decision, you veer a little bit off course in that decision, you don't have to worry so much because you have a shepherd who's leading you. So he's going to take that decision, he's going to steer it right back into God's loving plan for your life because you have a shepherd who's going in front of you. Now, I know some of you might feel right now, it may not look in your life Like you have a shepherd who's leading you into green pastures. Maybe right now it's hard to see the good shepherd. Your life feels more chaotic, disorienting, confusing. Maybe there's a lot of pain that you're going through right now and you think, I don't really know if I have a good shepherd. But can I remind you of what we said before? Even when the shepherd goes out and finds his lost sheep and rejoices and, ties up his legs and throws him over the shoulder, the shepherd is rejoicing, but the sheep isn't. The sheep is frantic. The sheep is confused. The sheep is disoriented. The sheep is thinking, what the heck is going on? Maybe the sheep has vertigo because he's been thrown up onto the shepherd's shoulders. And so, therefore, friends, when you feel that way in your life, maybe rather than concluding that you don't have a good shepherd, maybe think, oh yeah, I'm a sheep. I'm a sheep, and therefore lean not on your own understanding. Trust your shepherd. Obey your shepherd. Continue to listen to the voice of the shepherd. Continue to follow the good shepherd. And often it's in those most painful moments in our lives that it's not just that Jesus is going before us, but it's often in those times that he actually picks us up and carries us. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is Isaiah 40, verse 11. It says, he tends his flock like a shepherd, and he lifts up the lambs and he carries them close to his heart. And friends, when you're going through painful moments, remember Jesus looks at you and he picks you up and he carries you close to his heart, and you can trust him. You can trust him because he knows you. He protects you because of how much he values you, and he leads you. And is it humbling to admit that you're a sheep? Absolutely. And yet, there is no greater comfort than knowing that you have a good shepherd. And it's as we come to this table together this morning that we celebrate in a physical, even tangible way, what Jesus meant when he said, I am the good shepherd who lays down my very life for my sheep. And on that night when Jesus would be betrayed, he gathered with his disciples, and after giving thanks to God, he took the bread and he broke it. And he said, this is my body given for you. Would you take and eat in remembrance of me? And then after they'd had supper, Jesus took the cup and he gave it a new meaning. He said, this cup is the new covenant of my blood poured out for the forgiveness of your sins. Drink you all of it in remembrance of me. And friends, as often then as we get to eat of this bread and we get to drink of this cup, we proclaim Jesus' saving death until he comes again. And brothers and sisters, he surely is coming again. These are the gifts of God for the people of God. And so if you have trusted in Jesus as your good shepherd, maybe even today, it's one thing to say Jesus is a good shepherd. It's another thing to say he's my shepherd. And if you trusted in Jesus as your shepherd, then this table is for you. And so in a moment, I would invite you, come forward and take one of these communion packets, bring it back with you to your seat, but wait. And then after we finish singing the next song, then Deacon Jill Hickey is going to come forward and she'll lead us in sharing in the Lord's Supper together. These are the gifts of God for the people of God, so would you come now and receive?